Andrew Devenport, CEO of Youth Business International, joins me in the studio now. Andrew, thank you so much for coming in. Have a seat. Yeah, good to see you. So, would you describe Europe as being a fertile place for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely, yeah. I think and the need is very great right now. We have, as you were saying, very high levels of unemployment. I've just come back from Spain where youth unemployment is 40%.
Yeah. So you think that entrepreneurship small and medium-sized businesses can really contribute to job growth in Europe?
That's where most of the jobs are created.
So, but when you compare it to Silicon Valley, the likes of Apple, Microsoft, Google, you don't seem to have anything on that scale here in the UK or indeed wider Europe. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, I think that I think you've got to get the core ingredients for entrepreneurship in place. Access to capital, and there's been a lot talked about that recently. Support services for entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurial culture, which is stronger perhaps in the States, needs to be constantly reinforced. The regulation and tax systems oriented to help entrepreneurs, and finally education. Bringing entrepreneurship into the education world ever more is essential.
Okay, well, you know, with that in mind, I'm pleased to say we can also speak to a former Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Rob Lewis is the CEO of Omnifone. Joins us live now from the Follow the Entrepreneur conference taking place in southern England at the moment. Thanks so much for speaking to us. So, you know, just discussing with Andrew there some of the obstacles that entrepreneurs come up against. And he mentioned a number of things, you know, funding, tax, regulation. And obviously you have been through this initial phase of starting up a company. Can you tell us about the single biggest challenge that you faced in doing this?
Yeah, well, I've had a number of companies that we've built and actually sold, in some cases to American companies. But I think the biggest issue that entrepreneurs, particularly in the technology space, and let's remember that the information revolution is really, really important in terms of global leadership. It's very, very difficult for European entrepreneurs to raise the kind of capital on the kind of same terms as their American competitors. The talent is here. The technology is here. There are some very, very bright people here who are very entrepreneurial. And a lot of them actually end up heading to Silicon Valley, because in Silicon Valley they can get the investment, they can get the funds, whereas really over here in Europe, a lot of the time, they're only going to raise the cash from angel investors, not from funds. And that's a bit sad, because I think the government here in the UK and also across Europe should recognize that there's a strategic significance of having the information revolution flourish and be invented in Europe, not just consumed in Europe.
So, Rob, why do you think that recognition isn't there?
Sadly, I think in the current economic climate across Europe, where there's a desperate desire to raise tax, it would probably be deeply unpopular to suggest that actually we should try and reduce tax or create schemes to specifically invest in new technology companies. But I believe, considering the very small amount of money that's currently invested in Europe compared with Silicon Valley, in startups, in technology startups, some of which can become, as you said, some of the largest and most influential and important companies in the world, I would argue that European administrations should be focusing to try and make Europe a place where people want to create those businesses, can fund those businesses, because ultimately the long-term benefits to the economy in Europe are absolutely enormous.
Yeah, and so, Andrew, with that in mind, just coming back to you a little bit, and obviously you're dealing with a lot of groups and you know, startups, or at least, you know, that's the idea, is what needs to happen to make it easier for these groups, for people who want to set up small, medium-sized businesses to obtain that kind of funding?
Well, I think to pick up on those points, we've got to create an environment where it's easier to start a business. It's supported not only in the public sector. It's not only this is not only about government. I think it's about civil society. It's about the business community getting behind this. And I think we've also one of the great things we have in going in favor is there's a very fertile field in terms of innovation. And perhaps the most innovative group of the population is the young. That's where we have the highest level of unemployment, and those are the people who are by their nature at the cutting edge of technological developments.
And Rob, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the kind of M&A in the tech space, because I've spoken to a couple of entrepreneurs, you know, people who've started their own tech companies, and there does seem to be this sense that, you know, that it's more lucrative to push into North America what can we do, or what needs to happen to make Europe a more favorable, desirable environment for these companies to stay here and grow their presence and stay within this region?
Well, there's no doubt the technology arena is a global play. I mean, we have a company, we're present effectively in 40 countries in the world. We just happen to be headquartered in London, and we could be headquartered in the States. The reality, though, is that I think it's all about the ability to raise cash in order to set those companies up. And the right management are here in Europe, the talent is here. I just think we need governments to actually see it as an urgent and a critical issue to make sure that the businesses of tomorrow, the giant global companies of tomorrow, are started in Europe rather than just started in the States. And I think it's a very positive thing, because the economic growth that comes with tech businesses and the infrastructure, the training, the education that comes with it, and the tax revenues that generated when you have a bit of companies that can be worth billions of dollars, which then actually generates enormous amounts of capital gains tax and corporate tax revenue. It's a no-brainer. I just think that sadly at the moment the governments and those who are supposed to deliver leadership are focused on other things.